Hey guys, I had a member of one of my Facebook groups ask me a question, and I thought it would be a really helpful topic to address because it's a common question that I hear all the time. And what happened was the situation was he was a big guy, really big guy, 250 plus, and he was mentioning that one of the things that he was really trying to work on, even though he's a big guy, he's an athletic guy. One of the things he was really trying to work on is developing his guard game, his open guard game, and he was trying to put a lot of time into fighting off of his back, which obviously that is a really important aspect of jiu-jitsu, the ability to basically be able to fight off your back. But one of the things I recommended to him is that instead of learning how to fight off your back and develop a really good open guard game, is understanding when someone passes your guard, basically how to escape, how to get back to your knees and go for the takedown. Because from the open guard, one of the main things we're always looking to do is we're looking to go for sweeps, basically reverse the position so that we can end up on top. Well, if someone passes your guard and you're able to get back to your knees and then take them down and end up on top, you kind of achieve the same thing. So you end up with the same result. So that's really important because the thing is with jujitsu, not everyone has the ability to develop the same way. Not everybody has the ability to develop the same game. So much of jujitsu is based upon our own physical attributes and our mindset. So the amazing thing and the beautiful thing about jujitsu is jujitsu works for everybody. It works for everybody, but everyone's jujitsu is going to be different. And so that's one of the reasons why we call it a martial art. It is an art form, and it's each individual's personal expression of the concepts and the techniques of the art. And so for each individual, we're going to develop differently. Each individual will have different strengths, each individual will have different weaknesses, and we're going to have different strategies and ways that we kind of play the game. So that's really important because the thing is, body type, people don't realize this, but body type has a tremendous impact on how we're going to develop our jiu-jitsu. So if I'm a guy with shorter, stubbier legs, it's going to be very difficult for me to play close guard, okay? Especially against bigger individuals. So against bigger individuals, and that's the thing, bigger individuals for the most part are not going to have to deal with a close guard unless they're maybe dealing with someone with longer legs. And so, if you're a shorter, stockier individual, you're not going to have a great close guard. You're not going to have, because as you start to break and pull people in with your close guard, there's a lot of tension that builds up in the ankles, and it's hard to keep your legs crossed around bigger people. You're not going to have good triangles. It's really difficult to lock triangles when you have shorter, thicker legs. And darces are going to be more difficult too. Darce chokes are going to be more difficult when you have shorter arms. And so, those techniques tend to people with kind of longer, lankier frames tend to have a little bit more of an advantage. And you'll notice that with triangles, a lot of times when I'm watching a match or watching a competition, I can tell, oh, those guys, these specific body types, these guys are going to have particularly good triangles because they're built for that. And so that's really important to understand in jiu-jitsu is each of us will have a completely different style. Each of us will have different games, and that's great. That's amazing because really what it is as you're going about learning jiu-jitsu, you have to make it work for you. You have to make it work for your body type and your mindset. And so the amazing thing with jiu-jitsu is there's so many techniques available, and there's different ways to arrive at the same outcome. And so that's the other thing with submissions. There's so many submissions available so that if triangles don't work for you, if darces don't work for you, there's other submissions that will become available, that will be available from those positions that you can kind of work on developing. And so one of the things I really recommend to people, especially when you're first starting out, is kind of trying to understand what works for your body type. What are your strengths? The thing with having bigger individuals for the most part are going to have a more difficult time fighting off their back. Okay, with shorter legs, okay, they're not able to create as much distance with longer legs. Longer legs is easier to push people away and keep more distance. With shorter legs, it's harder to create that distance. Also, with bigger guys, they don't have the same mobility for the most part, speed and mobility and hip movement as shorter people do. or the endurance. And so that's the thing. If you're a bigger guy and you're really developing, trying to focus on your open guard, a lot of times it feels like you're fighting a huge uphill battle. Well, there's other ways to go about developing yourself where you can still have an extremely effective game. You don't have to force yourself to develop a great open guard. Now, obviously, in the long run, over time, we all want to work on our weaknesses. We all want to develop a complete overall game. But you have to understand that certain positions, just certain people are going to tend to have advantages over others. What you'll notice with smaller guys is smaller guys tend to be faster. They tend to be more flexible. Okay, so smaller guys are going to move quicker. They're going to scramble a little bit more. Okay, they have different attacks that they go for. A lot of times, smaller guys, they develop a really good bottom game because a lot of times in training they end up on the bottom a lot. So you see with smaller guys, they're going to have a better guard. They're quicker. They're more mobile. So they have a lot better hip movement. It's easier for them too because of the shorter legs and smaller limbs. Smaller guys, it's easier for them to recover because they can fit their limbs into smaller holes. Where bigger guys tend to have a harder time, and especially if you lack mobility, flexibility, you're going to have a harder time playing the guard and having the dexterity with your legs and the speed with your legs to basically play that game. So anyways, guys, I just thought that would be really helpful to address because I always hear all the time people, really trying to develop the weak aspects of their game, and that is really important, obviously, and I highly recommend, training all aspects of your jiu-jitsu, but also to recognize that each individual is going to have different strengths and weaknesses. And what's important is that you develop a game that works for you. Develop a game for your body type. Bigger guys tend to end up on top more. And so with bigger guys, I always tell bigger guys, learn how to use your weight. Learn how to be heavy. Learn how to apply your weight on individuals. And so if a bigger guy is training with a smaller guy that's really fast, what happens is there's no way the big guy is going to be able to maintain the same pace as a smaller guy. What happens is when you're moving around more mass, your body consumes more oxygen, you're going to get tired quicker. And so for the most part, bigger guys do not have the speed and the endurance of smaller guys. And so what happens is if you learn to use your weight, you can actually slow down smaller guys. Now, vice versa for smaller guys usually tend to have more flexibility, more speed, and more endurance. And so if you can force a bigger guy to kind of maintain pace or try to keep your pace, you're going to gas them out. And so that's a huge advantage for the smaller guys. And obviously the flexibility comes in handy when you're playing off your back, when you're playing guard. The speed also comes in handy too, because if you can do 2 moves for every 1 move your opponent does, you'll be able to outpace him, you'll be able to catch up to him, you'll be able to implement your techniques faster than he can counter your movements. And so that's the cool thing with, like I said, with jiu-jitsu is it works for everybody. Everyone has the ability to develop an extremely high skill level, but you want to figure out a jiu-jitsu that works for you. And even similar body types, people's mindsets will be different. Some individuals will tend to have a more offensive game where they like to attack. Some individuals like to have a more top-heavy game. Some individuals like to have a bottom game. Some individuals will play a more defensive game where they're a lot better at staying safe in these different positions and then getting out and getting on top and maybe holding dominant positions. And so obviously we want to learn to attack if we have a more defensive game. If we have a more defensive game, obviously we want to learn a more offensive game, and vice versa. But like I said, we want to fill in the gaps over time, but also just realize that as you're training, jiu-jitsu is just an expression of you. It's you taking the concepts and the ideas, and of course the techniques, and applying them to yourself, your body type, and developing a game that works for you. And that's the important thing with training with different people, is that different people feel different. And so that's, I always recommend for people to train with as many different people, as many different styles as possible, because you start to learn to adapt and understand what different people are doing. You'll pick up moves that may work for your body type. And so I feel that's really, really important. And so, I know a lot of people get frustrated because they're trying to develop maybe a certain aspect of jiu-jitsu that it's always going to be a struggle for them. And so, I just want you to realize that there's different ways to arrive at the same outcome. And that's the beauty, the real beauty of jiu-jitsu is, like I said, it works for every person, every body type. You have to just make jiu-jitsu your own.